Push.
The evening was warm in Madrid, the sky painted in shades of gold as the sun melted into the horizon. Adesuwa sat at the rooftop of an exclusive hotel, her glass of wine untouched. She wasn't there for pleasure. She was there because one of her powerful friends had promised to connect her to someone who needed good company. She had heard this line before. It usually meant another transaction, another max, another night of pretending. But when she saw him walk into the lounge, something strange happened. Daniel carried himself with the carelessness of youth, dressed in designer clothes that screamed money. His smile lopsided but charming. Adesuwa had seen men of all kinds, rich, powerful, broken, arrogant. But this young man was different. He was magnetic, like a piece of her had been walking around the earth, and she had just found it. When he stretched out his hand to greet her, the moment their palm touched, a shiver ran through her entire body. She froze, her eyes locked on his. The noise of the bar, the laughter, the clicking glasses, all of it faded. For the first time in her life, Adesuwa felt something she had long buried: connection. She put her hand back quickly, almost afraid. Her chest tightened as she tried to steady her breath. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, his deep voice filled with casual concern. I'm fine," she stammered, forcing a smile. They sat across from each other, and the conversation flowed in a way Adesuwa had never known with any man. Daniel wasn't like the politician who bragged about their power, their businesses, who talk only of money. He asked her about her favorite books, about the places she did travel, about her dreams. No one had asked her about her in years. And yet, every time he laughed, every time his eyes lingered on hers, Adesuwa felt the ground slipping beneath her. Was this love? Was this what she spent her life running from? But how could she, a woman battered by her past, dare to feel such thing? She had locked her heart away long ago, convinced that love was a luxury she could never afford. And yet here she was, trembling like a teenage girl. When Daniel leaned forward, his hand brushing against hers on the table, Adesuwa pulled back sharply. "I can't," she whispered. Daniel frowned, confused. "Can't what?" Her eyes brimmed with tears as she couldn't explain. "I don't know what this is, but I'm afraid I've spent my whole life building walls. I don't know how to feel this." He looked at her with softness, unaware of the truth that bound them. "Maybe that's because you've never been with the right person." Her heart pounded violently. She wanted to run, but she couldn't. She wanted to stay, but she dared not. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked on Adesuwa as though she was the only woman in the world. The soft light of Madrid's rooftop lounge cast a golden glow on his face, and in that moment, he looked like a temptation himself. Adesuwa's hands trembled under the table. She had pulled back from him earlier, but he wasn't letting go. His gaze held hers, persistent, almost desperate. "You know," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight far beyond his years. "I've been with women before, plenty of them, but none of them ever made me feel like this." Adesuwa's breath caught in her throat. She forced a smile, hoping to brush it aside. "Daniel, you don't even know me." He shook his head, leaning forward. "That's the thing, I don't have to. From the first moment we shook hands, something clicked. Something I can't explain. You feel it too, I saw it in your eyes." Her chest arched as though he had torn open wounds she had buried long ago. She looked away, blinking back tears. "I can't give you what you're asking for," she whispered. "I am too broken, too old for this. My life is complicated." But Daniel only smiled, unbothered. "Age doesn't scare me. Complications don't scare me. What scares me is letting go of something this real. Give me a chance, Adesuwa. Let me prove it." His words pierced her like knives. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him to stop, but instead she sat frozen, overwhelmed by the emotion she couldn't explain. Was this what love felt like? Or was it madness? She stood quickly, her chest scraping against the floor. "I have to go." "Adesuwa, wait." Daniel reached out, catching her wrist. The warmth of his touch sent shivers racing through her body. For a moment, she nearly collapsed back into the chair, her heart betraying her resolve. But with trembling lips, she whispered, "You don't understand. I can't. I won't." She pulled her hand free and walked out into the night, her tears blinding her. That night, when she returned to her hotel room, she collapsed on the bed and wept like she hadn't in years. She did not understand it. Why him? Why now? Why did his presence tell something so deep, so unexplainable? She thought it was love, but what she felt was blood calling to blood. For the first time in years, she felt fear not of poverty, not of men, not of the past, but of love itself. That night, Adesuwa fled. That flight back to Nigeria felt longer than any she had ever taken. The luxury seat, the champagne, the soft blanket, none of it mattered. Her soul was in turmoil. Back in Abuja, she locked herself in her mansion for days, unable to eat, unable to sleep. She told herself she had done the right thing, yet her heart throbbed with confusion. For the first time in years, Adesuwa, who thought she had seen it all, felt like a lost child again. And across the ocean, Daniel replayed their meeting over and over in his mind, convinced he had found something worth fighting for. Neither of them knew the storm that was coming, because fate wasn't finished with them yet. The rain had just finished falling in Abuja, the city glistening under the early morning sun, and the scent of wet air drifted through Adesuwa's half-open balcony. She sat by the window in her sick robe, staring into nothingness. It has been weeks since Madrid, but Daniel's words still echoed in her heart. Give me a chance, I've never felt this before. Her chest tightened each time she remembered him. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something she could never name, and that frightened her more than anything. A knock at the door startled her. Adesuwa rarely had visitors. Men came by appointment, and friends, if she could call them that, were mostly clients. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Chima, she whispered. Her younger brother stood there, drenched in sweat from the Abuja sun. A small bag slung over his shoulder. He looked older than she remembered, worry lines creasing his forehead, but his eyes still carried the warmth of the boy who once sneaked her food when their father turned his back. Big sister, he said softly, his voice trembling. Can I come in? For a moment, Adesuwa could only stare. No one from her family had set foot in her home before. She pulled him into a tight embrace, her tears falling freely. They sat in her living room, the silence heavy between them. Finally, Chima spoke. I came because something happened in the village. Father, he hesitated, swallowing hard. Father wept Adesuwa. Her heart stilled. She almost laughed, thinking it was impossible. Her father, the man who had called her a disgrace, the man who had said she was dead to him. What do you mean? She asked, her voice breaking. Chima's eyes glistened. The nurse who helped you when you gave birth. She came back. She's sick, very sick. She told us everything. Adesuwa's chest tightened. Everything? He nodded. That you had a son. That she told you he died. But she sold him. She said she hasn't known peace since that day. She came to the house to confess, crying, begging for forgiveness. Father broke down in front of everyone. He kept saying, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me for failing my daughter. Adesuwa covered her mouth with her trembling hand. The room spun around her. She staggered back, sinking into the sofa. My son, she whispered, her body shaking. Chima reached for her hand. I knew I had to tell you myself. She wants to see you. She said she won't die until she looks you in the eyes and begs for forgiveness. She's here in Abuja with me. Adesuwa's eyes widened, her pulse racing. The words of her past, the lies, the rejection, the pain were collapsing all at once. And outside, waiting with the weight of years on her shoulders, was the woman who had stolen her motherhood. Adesuwa sat frozen on the sofa, her body trembling as though struck by lightning. Chima's words cycled in her head like an echo that refused to fade. You had a son. She told you he died, but she sold him. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She pressed her palm to her face, but the tears wouldn't stop. It was as if 20 years of suppressed grief have come rushing out all at once. My son, she whispered, her voice hoarse. My son, he's alive? Shima's grip on her hand tightened. Yes, sister, that's what she said. Adesuwa let out a wail that shook the walls of the mansion. She collapsed onto the marble floor, beating her chest with both fists. Why? God, why? All these years of pain. of loneliness. I thought I buried him. I thought he was gone. How could they do this to me? Her cries carried the weight of a broken woman, a mother robbed of her firstborn. She thought of the cold nights she spent under the bridge, the shame of selling her body just to eat, the men who used her, the emptiness she filled with money and forced laughter. All along, her child had been somewhere in the world, breathing, laughing, growing without her. I should have fought. I should have asked questions. She screamed, her voice raw. Instead, I believed them. I let them bury me in lies. I let them bury him. Chima knelt beside her, his own tears streaming. You were just a child yourself, Adesuwa. Don't carry this blame alone. But she shook her head violently. No, Chima, I carried pain I didn't deserve. I carried shame that wasn't mine. And now what am I supposed to do with this truth? Where do I even begin? Her sobs filled the room until it felt like the very air was grieving with her. She clutched the hem of her rope, rocking back and forth like a mother mourning an unseen coffin. For the first time in decades, she wished her mother were by her side. She remembered those small moments, her mother sneaking food into her room, her mother's eyes pleading silently when her father's anger roared. Perhaps Mama would have wept with her now, but Mama wasn't there. Only Chima, the loyal brother who refused to let her story end in silence. He touched her shoulder gently. Sister, the nurse is here. She says she won't leave Abuja until she sees you. Adesuwa froze, her tears still flowing. She wiped her face with shaking hands. Her breath raged. The thought of facing that woman sent another wave of rage and sorrow through her. Bring her in, she whispered, her voice trembling like broken glass. The living room door creaked, and there, leaning on Chima for support, walked in the frail figure of Nurse Ijoma. Her eyes were swollen from weeping, her body weak, but her spirit weighed heavier than both. The past had finally entered Adesuwa's house. The air in the room was thick, almost unbreathable. Adesuwa sat slumped on her chair, her dress clutched tightly against her chest, her tears drying in sticks on her cheeks. Chima stood near the windows, his arms folded, watching with the quiet patience of a man carrying someone else's burden. The nurse remained at the center of the room, shifting nervously from foot to foot, her frail body trembling. She coughed softly, then pressed her hands together, as though in prayer. Adesuwa, she began, her voice breaking. I know I have no right to stand here. I know I deserve your hatred. But I could not leave this world without telling you the truth. What I did to you, it has haunted me every single day. Adesuwa raised her head slowly, her swollen eyes sharp with anger and fear. You told me my child died. You stood there and crushed me with those words. What truth could you possibly have left to tell? The nurse dropped to her knees, tears spilling freely down her face. Your child did not die. The words hung in the air like thunder. Adesuwa gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as if to stop herself from screaming. Her heart pounded so loudly, she could hear it in her ears. What? What did you just say? Chima turned sharply towards the nurse, his face hardening. Explain yourself now. The nurse shook violently, her palms pressed against the floor. That
Push.
night, after you delivered, a man came. He was powerful, wealthy, and he wanted a child at all costs. I was weak at this war. I was desperate. I let him take your son in exchange for money. I told you the baby had died because I thought it would end there, but it didn't. My life has never known peace since then. Adesuwa stumbled to her feet, her body swaying, her voice trembled, filled with raw pain. You sold my child? You tore him from my arms and sold him? The nurse buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I have been sick for years, Adesuwa. No medicine heals me. I know it is the weight of what I did to you. I came here not to beg for mercy, but to confess before it kills me. Your son is alive. Somewhere out there, he is breathing, and you deserve to know. Adesuwa let out a sharp broken cry and collapsed on the floor. Chima rushed to her, holding her as her body shook violently in his arms. Adesuwa clawed at his shirt, her tears soaking through the fabric. My son, all these years, my son, she whispered, her voice shattered. The nurse crawled forward, bowing her head near Adesuwa's feet. Forgive me if you can, but if you cannot, then may God judge me as I deserve. I have carried this truth for too long. Now it belongs to you. Silence swallowed the room. Adesuwa rocked back and forth in Chima's arms. Her heart ripped open. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just broken. She was burning with a desperate fire, a fire to find her son. The room was heavy with silence after the nurse's confession. Adesuwa's tears hadn't stopped flowing, her sobs choking her chest as Chima tried to steady her. Then with trembling lips, the nurse whispered the name of the man who had bought her son. The name cut through the air like a blade. Adesuwa froze. Her breath hitched. She repeated the name softly as though her ears had deceived her. But no, it was true. Senator Ibrahim Sule, the wealthy Abuja politician, the man who once kept her in his mansion for weeks, feeding her with wealth and covering her with luxury, only to discard her like trash when he got tired of her. The same man who had paraded her before his friends as nothing more than a jewel bought with money. Her body went cold, her chest tight with disgust. She staggered backward, shaking her head violently. No, no, God forbid. You mean that man, that monster, bought my child? The nurse lowered her head in shame. Yes, it was him. He told me he had no hair. He was desperate. He paid me enough to silence me for life. I thought it was over, but the curse of that night has never left me. Adesuwa screamed, her voice shattering the room. She felt dirty, cursed, like the ground beneath her feet had collapsed. She had once given her body to the very man who had stolen her child. Her pain boiled into rage. I will not let him get away with this. I will go to the police, to the press, to anyone who will listen. He may be wealthy, but I will drag his name through the mud until the truth comes out. Chima placed a hand on her shoulder. Sister, be careful. You know men like him are untouchable in this country. But if you want to fight, I will stand beside you. The very next day, Adesuwa walked into the police headquarters in Abuja, her head high, her heart bleeding. She filed her petition naming Senator Ibrahim as the man who bought her child. The officers looked at her with a mix of pity and fear. When his allies in the police force reached out to Senator concerning the case, he asked them to throw the case under the carpet. Senator's laughter filled his mansion, surrounded by guards carrying the confidence of a man who had bought justice many times before. Behind closed doors, he summoned Daniel. My son, the senator said, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. You must remain abroad for now. I just got an information that our security have been compromised. These vultures are cycling me, and if they see you here, they will use you against me. Stay away until I get to the root of it. Daniel frowned, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Dad, I just got back from Spain 2 days ago. I have a lot of things going on with me that I need to fix. And you're telling me to go back again? Father, why do I always have to run when your name is mentioned? What exactly are you hiding from me? But the senator only smiled coldly. Obedience is better than questions. Go. Daniel left, his heart restless. Meanwhile, Adesuwa sat in her mansion, her hands trembling as she lighted a candle and whispered a broken prayer. She had no idea that the son she was ready to destroy the world for was the same young man whose touch had made her heart tremble in Madrid, the son of the senator, the forbidden flame, her Daniel. For as long as Daniel could remember, he had lived like a shadow. The world saw his wealth, his expensive taste, his endless travels, his carelessness with women and cars. But no one saw his truth. Senator Ibrahim and his wife raised him behind walls higher than prison gates. From childhood, they told him you are different. The world must never know who you belong to. Our enemies are ruthless. They can harm you to get to us. So Daniel grew not as a son but as a secret. At school, he was that boy who had everything but belonged to no one. Friends assumed he was the child of some foreign investors, a businessman with too much money to count. Some whispered he was fatherless, others believed he was the spoiled product of old wealth. None ever guessed the truth, and Daniel, chained by silence, never corrected them. The senator and his wife provided money in abundance, but love in starvation. They rarely visited him in London, leaving him with caretakers who never once asked how his heart was. He grew into a man surrounded by people, yet hollow within. So when he met Adesuwa and felt that unexplainable bond, he mistook it for the love he had been denied all his life. He pursued her with desperation, not knowing he was chasing his own blood. Meanwhile, in Abuja, Adesuwa battled her own storms. The revelation of her stolen child gnawed at her like fire in her bones. Nights became unbearable. Sleep fled from her eyes. How could she rest, knowing her son lived, yet belonged to a man who had built his empire on corruption and lies? Her decision came one restless night. She would go to the media. If the police had failed her, if her parents had failed her, if even life itself had failed her, she would not fail her son. The truth would come out and the senator would pay. But fate was already waiting. The morning was quiet in Abuja, almost too quiet. Adesuwa had her speech written, her documents arranged, the contact of a trusted journalist ready on her phone. Chima, her loyal brother, promised to accompany her. We will fight this battle together, he told her, squeezing her hands as though transferring courage into her trembling heart. But just as Adesuwa stepped out of her gated compound, a black-tinted van stretched to a halt in front of her. Four marksmen jumped out. In seconds, her screams were swallowed by a rough palm across her mouth. Neighbors peeped through their windows, but no one dared to intervene. In Abuja, everyone knew when power was at play. Silence was survival. By the time Chima arrived minutes later, the compound gate was wide open. Adesuwa's slippers abandoned at the entrance. His heart sank. He rushed to the police station, but his cries fell on deaf ears. Sir, this is a delicate case. Allow us to investigate properly, the police muttered, barely looking up from his desk. Chima slammed his fist on the table. Investigate? You swept her first complaint under the carpet. How long will you continue protecting the senator while my sister suffers? The officer's silence was the answer. Chima left the station, rage boiling in his chest. He knew now the system would not save Adesuwa. The senator was too powerful, too connected, too untouchable. It was on him, Chima, to fight for the sister everyone abandoned. He clenched his fist, whispering into the evening air, Adesuwa, wherever they've taken you, I will find you. I swear it with my life. And somewhere, in a dark room with no windows, Adesuwa's muffled cries echoed. A broken mother trapped once again by the cruelty of men. The game had shifted, and this time, survivor would demand more than tears. London was supposed to feel like home, but Daniel felt caged. The luxury apartment, the constant inflow of money, the endless distraction, it all felt empty. Since his last meeting with Adesuwa, he could not shake off her face. Her eyes haunted him. They carried pain too familiar as though her soul had whispered something into his without words. He dialed her number countless times, but it never connected. Her social media had gone silent too. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt helpless. He did not want the cars, the parties, or even the women his friends kept throwing his way. He wanted her. Back in Abuja, Chima refused to rest. His sister's slippers at the gate replayed in his mind like a curse. Every day he visited stations, made calls, followed whispers. Meanwhile, Senator Ibrahim sat in his study, the curtains drawn, the air heavy with cigar smoke. His informant, a jittery police officer, had just left after delivering a troubling report. Sir, the relatives of the woman you asked us to keep silent are making noise. One of them, her brother, is pushing the case aggressively. He even gone on social media. The senator's brow furrowed deeply. Until that moment, he believed Adesuwa was just another girl picked from the streets years ago, polished by wealth, disposable, the kind he silenced to protect his empire. His informant had told him he was an orphan with no roots, no family, a loose end he could cut without consequences. But now, this revelation unsettled him. If she had relatives, if she had history, if she belonged somewhere, then her silence might not stay buried. He was at a crossroads. Meanwhile, in a cramped apartment across Abuja, Chima fought with his phone like it was his only weapon. He poured his grief into words, posting furiously on social media about his sister's adoption and the shameless silence of the police. My sister Adesuwa was taken in broad daylight. The police was doing nothing. Is this justice? Must the poor always suffer in this country? The internet roared. Hashtags flew. Blogs carried the story. Abuja big girl missing, kidnapped in broad daylight. Others twisted it. Socialite allegedly taken by angry wife of powerful men. The gossip was loud but short-lived. Within days, powerful fingers reached into the media houses, paying to bring the story down. Posts vanished. Headlines shifted. Social media moved on easily, like it always did. But not Daniel. He saw the news before it disappeared. And when he saw her picture, Adesuwa, the only woman who had ever made his heart race, his chest tightened as if the world had stopped. Kidnapped? By who? Why?
Hello fam, it's your girl AC Folktales. Thank you for watching and do well to subscribe. Stay tuned for more interesting folktale stories. Bye.